Hi, everyone. This is Deanna and Simon. This is
Hi.
where you say hi, Simon.
Hi, Simon.
Sorry. Okay. All right. So, welcome to another episode of the Other Kind of Weird podcast. And this is one that I'm very much looking forward to because I was saying just before we started recording that I watched some of your last episode with your wife, and some of the comments were really interesting of people loving the testimony and actually a lot of hope and faith being received. Um, but I figured, you know what, that was you talking about your life as a couple. You're still married, but I'd love to kind of dig in a bit deeper into who you are as a person. So I'd love to just start off with maybe you just describing who you are, what you do. How would you describe yourself?
Sure. It's always a tricky question to answer, isn't it? How would you describe yourself? Um, I mean, uh, so I'm a professional Christian. Um, I'm not fully paid yet, but that's coming. Uh, I teach and activate Christians. Um, I have to have a job because of yet I'm not earning enough to live off of what I want to do. And by trade, I'm a builder.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, so I'm 49. I am passionate about Jesus, passionate about the supernatural, passionate about the Bible. Um, what else can I tell you? What else do you need to know?
Well, I was hoping that you would say one particular word in your description, and maybe you left it out because you knew I was gonna ask you about this. Um, but I know from experience, just being around you, knowing you and what you're doing currently, that the Lord invited you to start a school of prophets. And so I would love to know what your journey has been like of you discovering um your wiring as a prophet
Yeah.
and how you've actually stepped into, raising up other prophets around you. So for those who don't know, how would you even describe a prophet and what kind of prophet are you? How did it start?
So, mm, so a prophet is somebody who hears the voice of God for others, for the church. A prophet is a gift to the church for direction, correction, and I personally think even strategy. Um, Distinctly different from the prophetic voice, which I
Yeah.
believe all believers have. I'm still on a journey of discovering what my voice as a prophet sounds like, and even the what I'm called to, because I do believe that prophets can be called outside of the church to given institutions, countries, people groups, um, and even the prophets can work at certain levels. So there could be a prophet who's simply um, a church prophet, a single church prophet,
Mm.
prophet in that part of the body. But there, and then there could be levels all the way up to a national or global prophet. Um, Personally, where I am right now is still discovering what that looks like. I haven't particularly been released as a prophet in my local church. I've been released by organisations. KLM is one of them. So my prophetic voice is still developing, and I actually believe that that's a lifetime um, process. I
Yeah.
think it's very easy for people to say that they are one thing, this thing, or that thing, or they hear God this way or that way. Um, and for me, that just means you've put everything in a box. You put God in a box, and you've limited yourself and God. So, still developing as far as what I am or what kind of prophet I am. Um, does that help?
Yeah, that's super helpful. And one of the reasons why I'm asking is because I know I mean, the podcast is called The Other Kind of Weird, and you're one of the weirdest people that I know. As a compliment, if we're going by the technical definition of weird being strange and supernatural, you're someone who, yeah, goes against the grain in terms of thinking outside the box and not fitting a particular bubble or a particular mode.
Yeah,
So I'd
yeah,
love to know like what your journey was. There was a lot of acceleration once you came into the kingdom, right?
yeah, yeah.
Celine had been on a journey for a while. And so what was that journey like of you like hearing, like being aware that God spoke to you, to recognizing that you're a gift to the church to bring that to multiple people?
Sure. Well, cool. I suppose understanding that I'm weird, uh, that's that's been lifelong. Seriously, I refuse to take part in anything that the crowd took part in, even from a child. Um, I refuse to like things that other people liked.
Mm.
So I was already on a path of being different,
Yeah.
being called out, not even realizing I was called out. Um, and I had supernatural experiences without any grid for fully understanding what they are. Um, and really, maybe we can go back into that, but coming into the kingdom in 2012, so I was 48 and I just, out of frustration, I guess, I just shouted out in a car driving around the M25, the orbital motorway around London. This is stupid. I can't believe this. Okay, I believe. And that's okay, I believe. I believe that there's a God. I believe that there's a devil and that there's angels. I believe in it. And I said, hook, line, and sinker.
Mm.
And just to backtrack a little bit, there was a period of time leading up to this where Celine was in the kingdom for 10 years, and I wasn't. And she talks about it in her testimony where it was a very, very tough, difficult time. Um, I'd been addicted to cannabis. I was a binge drinker, and I wasn't particularly nice to her or to those people around me. Um, that may not have been their view of it, but
Yeah.
I know I could have been better. So when I came in at this point, it was because um, out of frustration, I thought, well, okay, I might as well believe. Doesn't mean I have to go to church, but I might as well
Mm.
believe because I'd been having a conversation over about 6 weeks, internal conversation about ancient civilizations that led me to a point where, I mean, literally, this is so weird. Every day I would pick the conversation up at the point I left it the day previous, which I just didn't do.
And
And
sorry, I want you to continue, but was this a conversation that you were having with yourself?
I thought so.
Okay.
And now I realized that there was something else going on. But this conversation developed, and at the end of it, I got to a point where I'd boxed myself into a trap.
Mm.
And the trap was that we worship from very, very young. We worship all kinds of things. All civilizations have worshipped
Yeah.
all sorts of things from man, from the planet, from trees, the sun, different gods, gold, diamonds, wealth, whatever, all kinds of things. Right now, we're worshipping self.
Right.
And who put that in there was the question in my mind. Where did it come from? Because children do it, babies
Mm.
will do it, because they worship their parents. Oh, it's in us because it's not nurture. It's
Yeah.
in us. It's been put in us. It's been put in our very DNA. Because you see all the struggles of civilizations to get to this point, and boom, they get to a point where they're worshipping something. And at that point, I thought, oh, it's in us. Who put it there? Oh no, because there's only one being. in the whole of all creation that could put something in our very DNA, everyone. And at that point, the frustration came out. And I said, okay, okay. Hook, line, sinker. And I heard God say, go to church.
Mm.
And it was like he was just behind me. And I'm doing 70 miles an hour on the M25. And I kind of look over my shoulder, like, is that what was that? And the hairs on the back of my neck are up and I'm freaked out. And he says it again, go to church. And I remembered Celine telling me how she heard God speak to her. He spoke to her
Mm.
through the Bible, he spoke to her through things, through circumstances, for other people. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy. Um, and I thought, oh, this is how you talk to me. Oh, right. Realizing, and in fact, I didn't even question it. I didn't even, it wasn't like, who's that? Is that God? Because it wasn't me. And there was no one else in the car. And I knew it wasn't me. So it's going, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I can go to church. I can go to church. I can go to church. In the end, he said it 3 times. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go. Took me a few weeks to get up the courage to go to church.
Mm.
But I kind of assumed that meant I wouldn't have to go to church all the time, and that I just become to believe in him, not that I was going to be a Christian and all the negative connotations in my mind that had. But I went. Yeah, it's a whole story. But I went. Asked Celine what time church was on. She said, "Oh yeah, this time we start this time," and very cool, very laid back. But I'm out with the kids' church setting them up, so you'd have to be in church on your own. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. They know who I am. Getting there, no one's there. She's gone out to set up. Everybody's leading in, and I'm kind of sitting in the middle of this pew, giving off, radiating this. Don't talk to me. Don't come near me. Do not engage with this person. No one did. They left me alone. And then
Wow.
music starts, and I stand up with everybody else, and Slim comes into the pew, and I start to cry, and uncontrollable tears rolling down my face, and I sunk down in the seat, and I put my hands over my face in embarrassment, shame, and all sorts of stuff. Shame was a big one. Like snot and tears, and she sneaks this tissue in between my fingers so I could clean myself up.
Classic.
I later found out what she was thinking, but she'll tell you what was going on there. And I then spent the next, I don't know, 8, 10 weeks going to church every Sunday, bawling my eyes out. And my weeks were completely changed. Eventually,
Mm.
Celine got me a Bible because I was reading hers, and I stopped watching TV because I used to watch, like 8 hours a night of TV, and the drinking stopped and the smoking stopped, and it was like God took everything.
Yeah.
I was no longer interested. In fact, I wasn't even interested in food that much either. So, and I'm a good eater. So that was kind of my introduction to God, that he spoke.
Mm.
So that's what I anticipated. That was my expectation. That's what he did. Um, and I understand it now more like it was the audible voice, but also that there was the drop thought.
Mm.
But I knew it wasn't me. And so this is how the conversations went. He would he would drop the thought in, and
Yeah.
I would talk to him out loud if I could, and there would be another drop thought and another drop thought, and it was like we was having a conversation. And it's changed over the years, 12 years now, but it's always been the same. There's been times where God's not spoken to me, but for an extended period, weeks, months. Um, but it's always come back, but
Mm.
different. So It's so that was my introduction to the kingdom. And I was hearing God. I was reading the Bible. I took the Bible into church, and would say to the pastor, the Bible says that we're supposed to pray for each other. The Bible says that we're supposed to heal each other, that we're supposed to hear his voice, and and prophecy wasn't, and the pastor would say, yeah, well, why don't we do it? And he said, well, you do it. Oh, okay. Best thing you could have done.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, fair enough. So I did. I'd go up to him, and I'd say, I think God is saying this, and I'd write it down on my phone, or just tell him, and I'd just hand him the phone or send him a text message in right in the middle of the service, and he would say to me at the very first time he did this, yeah, great, great, great. I'll call you up. What? No, no, that's not what I was doing. I'll call you up and you can just give that word. Oh, and that's what happened. He would do that. And a little period in, he said to me, you don't have to be so serious. Why don't you just be yourself?
Mm.
I'm thinking, but but this is God speaking, and surely you have to be quite serious.
Deepen your voice and
Yeah, the
yeah.
Lord says. But and that helped too. That developed that kind of, I could just relax a bit.
Mm,
So yeah, so really, that's just rolled on. Me hearing him, and even Selena and I sitting down and having conversations, and I would say to her, so what do you think God is saying here, or what does God say to you? And she would say the same things to me. So we'd have this backwards
mm.
and forwards conversation. Really, does
Wow.
that good?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. So I guess it was you following the river that the Holy Spirit was leading you towards, and stewarding well what what was resonating in terms of hearing God's voice and not keeping it to yourself, but actually sharing it with Celine, sharing it with different people around you. Um, I'd love to know how, because actually, before we get there, can you give a few examples of maybe some prophetic words that you've had to share that have been like super weird, even for yourself, like really strange, offensive, and how you've actually got to the point where instead of using logic and second guessing, you've been able to just release it, however it may appear to your own mind.
Yeah. I mean, I must, I've got to give a shout out effectively to my first pastor, Jeff Ace. He was just fantastic. He really was. Um, and he just trusted, just, let me go kind of thing.
Mm.
And so one Sunday morning, I'm sitting, and God gives me this image of a minefield, and the field is covered in dog poo.
Great.
Okay. And people are just walking along like they're not seeing anything, stepping into this dog poo, and it's exploding and covering them and people behind them and with
Yeah.
them. And they don't even notice, they just carry on walking. Oh, okay. So I'm like, what do you mean? God, I mean, it's pretty obvious now, and I think it was fairly obvious then. People are just absolutely not paying attention to
Yeah.
what they're stepping in, and they're covering people in this stuff. Um, so I went up to the pastor, and no biblical reference here, Jeff, but but I believe that this is what God has said. And he laughed, and he said, "I'll give you 5 minutes, and I'll."
Shout out, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to stand up in church and give this word. And they looked at me like, hmm. I mean, the people did respond. But yeah, that was one of the times that I've been pushed. That was one of the times I've been pushed. I mean, on a completely different scale, more recently, I had to tell a church that I felt they had to close their doors. um, that was hard. That was hard, um, because I felt the weight of it,
Mm,
and oh God, really, that just doesn't. How do I explain this? And all the obvious questions that you'd have.
yeah.
It wasn't exactly appreciated. But I take the approach of it's not mine to kind of filter in my own head. It's mine to maybe take it back to God and ask him questions about it, and
Mhm.
um, to deliver it well, to phrase it well.
Yeah.
I've discovered that God talks to me like a Cockney 49-year-old. No, and not everybody is a male Cockney, a white male Cockney 59-year-old. So how do I deliver it in this situation? And he's gracious with that. So I had to kind of deliver it for the people. But yeah, that was tough. That was a hard word in a different way.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about actually feeling the weight of it,
Mm,
because it just makes me think about uh we were up in Glasgow a few weeks ago at GPA, for those listening, where Emma Stark was speaking. And I've heard her share a few times when she's had to give like directional or words that could sound like discipline or rebuke, or just knowing that people may not be in a position to receive it well. They'll need time to process, of how she's had to wrestle with
mm,
words. And actually it's not a joy in those moments to give it, because of the impacts that it's going to have. But I really feel like that's when God can trust you, when it's not just the revelation, but it's actually the responsibility and the weight that you feel alongside it, as well as his heart for people. Um, and which brings me to a point, like I feel like for all prophetic people, you're gonna have to cross that chicken line, isn't it? Whether it's dealing with your own security or the fear of rejection. So just I'd love to know for you in particular, because I know the Lord has given you influence and relationships with a bunch of people where you're able to give quite significant words. And so how do you deal with rejection, or what looks like rejection when people don't appreciate what you've said?
Um, I guess, I mean, in the beginning, when I was just at my local church, and um, I God made it very clear to me that I was a messenger, that it was a
Mm,
message, and that my duty was to deliver it. The leader's duty was to do something with it or not.
yeah.
Uh, so I had that approach from early days. It's just mine to deliver. I pray about it, I ask God, receive it, and then it's spoken, written, whatever, emailed, whatever, gone, done.
Yeah.
Um, and becoming uh, more understanding, more aware of the duties, if you like, or the responsibilities of a prophet. Um, the delivery weighs heavier on me, um, but I'm still just a messenger. So if I feel the weight on the word for delivery, that it has to be delivered,
Mm,
then I try to deliver it with as much humility as I can, and I take peace that I'm speaking it out. Once it's spoken out, my job is done. So if
mm,
it's rejected, uh, I don't. It's not my word, so I don't take ownership.
yeah.
However, there are times when words have been rejected, and I come away and I still feel the weight of God on that. But I can't convince someone to take a word.
Mm,
It's theirs to do with. Mine is
yeah.
just to deliver it. I may take it away and pray about it and intercede for them. I'm not an intercessor, so that doesn't weigh on me. But I will pray for people if Lord, you make it clear to them. You maybe someone else on their path, and maybe actually I'm the first stage in the delivery of this word, and they need a whole nother bunch of stages of different people delivering the word before
Mm,
the revelation. I'm a believer in the human condition is to judge things. We would I mean, how do we judge success? We
Yeah.
use our environment, we use our education and our system to gauge whether something has been successful. God doesn't work like that.
Mm.
So if I'm looking for my level of success, if I'm looking for human success level, I'm going to say, well, was the word received well, and did it get a big applaud, or were they jumping up and down with excitement, or was it really transformational, or.
Right.
That's my level of understanding. God's level of understanding is way different. So
Mm.
yeah, the word fouled. I bombed. It was abysmal. But actually, was that God's intention to get me to learn something or
Right.
somebody else to learn something? And
Yeah.
actually, the level of success or the thing that I measure success on is not my scale, it's God's. And I can't measure that success because I don't know what his scale is. So I kind of just try, you know, and
Yeah.
let it go. And how did I do, God? Was that all right?
Yeah. Let's super good. Um, I mean, in this climate, definitely more than ever, we need those pure, trusted prophetic voices because there is so much. And with social media, you have tons of people who are like, this person's fake, what they said is fake, this person's true, or
Yeah.
go in this direction in this way. So I'd love for you, well, I'd love to know what you're sensing the Lord is saying over the church, over the UK, what you're feeling prophetically right now over the landscape of where we live. So being the prophet that you are, I'm
Yes.
sure you're not
Well,
the only one.
the Spirit of the Lord says,
Let's do it.
um,
Like, what has God been speaking to you about specifically? Whether
specific
it's the church, leadership,
change,
government. Okay.
change, upheaval, change. So there was the whole feeling and sense around COVID of everything being shaken.
Mm,
And I got that too. But God's not finished.
right.
God's no, he is not finished shaking and rattling the systems. And I'm not talking about just church systems. Um, the way that I see God moving is that all things are being exposed. Every area of life, there are exposés of
Mm,
the trusted, the elite, the top dogs, the special. Um, and that's not all of them, and we have to be mindful of that because in the tidal wave of change, a whole bunch of people are going to be swept away. A whole bunch of theologies, understanding of ways of worship, and I'm not just talking about worship, Christian worship.
yeah.
People worship all kinds of things. There's a tidal wave of change where where worshiping and praising God, it's going to be turned on its head. There's going to be new understandings that we're going to come into that I see happening, within the sort of near distant future. I don't like to put time frame on it, but near distant. And the closer distances is going to be sore. We're going to be bleeding and limping and bloody nose and hurt. And this is people in general because our safeties are going to be taken away. The things that we look at as our safe places are going to be drawn away from us.
Mm,
And that means that we can only go one place for true safety, for true peace. God, the creator of all things, I see that this tidal wave is going to wash many away, but direct a
mm,
lot of others towards him
yeah.
in a very, very different. So synopsis for you.
Yeah. And I think even people outside of the church would definitely resonate with that because everyone is feeling the effects, whether it's economically, politically,
Mm,
spiritually, culturally, socially,
mhm.
in every single area. And what would you say or like one of the most important things is that we need to take hold of as Christians being in this upheaval, especially if it's not going to end right now?
So God has spoken to me from virtually day one of my journey of responsibilities.
Okay.
My responsibilities initially, the greater responsibilities, and now the responsibilities of all. We have huge responsibility to prepare. And what I mean by that is, um, you know, why is it that some of the biggest leaders in the church are falling right now?
Mm,
Is it because, or should I just to clarify, could one of God's messages be in this? That if we are following a single man, a single woman, one person, and not taking responsibility for our own walk because we're behind that person, we're
mm,
listening to their teachings, we're following their preachers, we're doing what they do. If we don't take responsibility for our own walk, Paul writes about who are you following, Apollos or Paul? Should you not be following Jesus? And I believe that our responsibility is to push into what it looks like to have a relationship with the guide, the teacher,
mm.
comforter, Holy Spirit. We're
Yeah,
supposed to be discipled by God Himself. I'm not saying don't be discipled in a human context. What
mm,
I'm saying is that if that discipling doesn't point you to Jesus, it's it,
exactly.
so yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. I was actually listening to someone who I love listening to, a prophet called Prophet Lovi, and he was talking about the greatest testimony that he receives from people. Like he's seen crazy things of like healings and deliverances, but he was actually saying the thing that moves his heart more than anything else is when someone says, um, like, hey, you know what, ever since I started listening to you or attending this church, I've just wanted to pray more. I've just fallen so much more in love with Jesus. I I've just been so hungry for God. And he was talking about that yesterday. And I was like, man, it's so true. If we're not pointing people for those, especially as leaders, if we're not pointing people towards Jesus, then like we're failing. Because actually we don't have something of deep value and lasting impact that we can offer to people.
Yeah,
It's him who can change their lives and who can bring that transformation.
absolutely.
So yeah, I like occasionally I'll think about what he said and like I want to be that person where if you hang around me, you're gonna fall more in love with God. So that's really cool. But a little segue, because talking about people who influence you and who disciple you, I'd love to know how your parents and how your upbringing influenced the type of person you are, the type of Christian um prophet, all that good stuff. What
Sure.
influence they had
Yeah.
on your
Um,
journey.
so a little bit of background. Um, my parents were working class East End family. Um, my dad worked all the hours to make money
Mm.
for his growing family. I'm one of six siblings, um,
Ooh.
four brothers and two sisters. Um, and I grew up with the understanding that I was a Christian, really out of convenience. Just we never went to church. Birth, deaths, and marriages. That was it. It was. I tried it as a Cub Scout, and didn't like the building, didn't like the people. Um, uh,
Great.
yeah, but they were spiritualists, and they came into spiritualism a little later,
Mm,
kind of by, I suppose, early double figures, not quite a teen. I became aware of a Ouija board in the house. We played with it. Don't do that. Um, I had nightmares as a kid. I was seeing things in my room, not because of the Ouija board.
yeah.
For quite some time, I was seeing things in my room and couldn't sleep. I was terrified of the dark. Had to have a light on so that I could see in the room. Um, so obviously there was things going on there in the spirit. But when my parents got into spiritualism, it was my dad was really they call them faith healers. He was a powerful faith healer. I didn't recognize it. I didn't know it. I'm in my early teens now, and my brother and I, my older brother, and I would help people come in the house. They've got sticks, and it was a few steps up to the front door, and we would help them up in the house. And one time I remember carrying someone up in a wheelchair, my brother and I. They walked out of the house, both people. My
Wow.
So I saw this,
Yeah.
and I must have put it back in my memory and just forgot about it, or in my later teens, smoking drugs, it affects the short-term memory, so it all probably just but it came back, and one of my brother that helped me carry these people up and help them in reminded me of it. So I did see this stuff happening, um, and even in our early marriage, Celine and I went to a famous medium's show, a lady called Doris Stokes, um, and I was sat in the audience in this big auditorium, and just all I could think of was, this is fake. This is
Mm,
such a powerful fake. It's ridiculous. And so it didn't touch me in the least. We even tried a medium. We went to the Spiritualist Centre, which is in the West End, Grosvenor Square or something like that. We
okay.
booked an appointment, went and saw this person, and I came out thinking that was a
Scam.
complete waste of money. No real. And one thing my mum did teach me was, don't give too much away. Let them come at you with their message, and don't actually tell them too much.
Mm,
So that, that was my approach, our approach. And came out, washed my hands of it all, never went back, completely
yeah.
dismissed it all. Um, and really, my spirituality, I had experienced things, more in those years, more like God looking after me than a spiritual occurrence.
Mm,
Sudden knowing of something that kept me safe.
yeah.
Um, First time I went into a pub, um, that sort of environment in the early 80s. First time I'm in there, and there's a lot of young people, and I'm with Celine and a friend of hers and her boyfriend, and the boyfriend's gone to the toilet or to the bar or something, and I just had to get these girls out. Literally had to get out, get out, get out, get out. And I have no understanding why. Get out. And I pushed them through a crowd to the door. And as we crossed the threshold, that there was obviously a fight going on, or pub
Mm,
going on. A whole bunch of glasses and bottles
oh my
flew across
gosh.
the pub to where we'd been standing.
Wow.
And we stood outside, and the girl's panicking because her boyfriend is in there. And I'm kind of looking through the doorway, like trying to keep them out at the same time, look through the doorway. But I don't know how that happened. I don't know what I saw. But
Mm,
muggings, I was from the East End of London. I've never been mugged. There's been attempted muggings on me, but I don't fight my way out of it. I see it coming and
mm,
position myself in a way where I'm not a victim. And it's an odd feeling. It's like, what, something's not right, something's
yeah.
wrong. And I look behind me and I'd see someone, and I know bad intent, I'd cross the road, and they'd cross the road behind me, so I'd cross back again, making it very obvious that I know what they're doing.
Right.
And then they'd turn around and go a different way. And that's happened several times. So supernatural occurrence that I have no explanation for. And then when I came into the kingdom and all this sort of hearing God and seeing the miraculous and, praying for people and all this kind of stuff and prophesying, yeah, it's like, oh, right, yeah, okay. Just made perfect sense.
Mm. Isn't it so interesting that you came from that environment? It's almost like spiritual heritage in some way of, yes, okay, maybe your parents didn't use it in the correct way, had good intentions, but maybe just not the revelation
Yes,
that Jesus is the gateway. But then it's something that you so quickly and naturally stepped into. It's not like it was the Holy Spirit who was discipling you and leading you straight into prophesying and going after healing and deliverance, and setting you up in that way, which is really cool. Sorry, this is a bit of a segue again, but
yeah.
how did you were your children pretty old by the time you became a Christian? Because I'd love to know how you like discipled them into the with the supernatural. Was it an easy thing to do, or yeah, what was that like?
So two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Rachel, I believe, 14, 15,
Okay.
and Leah about 19. Um, so Leah was already um, serving at Soul Survivor. She was on a Soul Survivor camp. So supernatural to her was not an issue.
Mm,
Was very real thing. And she's very prophetic, even if she doesn't practice too much right now. Great relationship with Jesus, with God. Um, Rachel, very fearful that I wasn't ever going to come into the kingdom.
okay.
Fearful, yeah, fearful. I remember having conversations with her, but Dad, what are you going to do if you don't get to heaven? And I would say, that's your belief, not mine.
Mm,
And that must have been quite hard, because for 10 years she had to hear me be rejecting my
right.
wife's faith. So when she could, at 12 and 13, articulate this fear, she did. She's got a great relationship with Jesus. Um, when when we came in, when I came into the kingdom, um, so that was tricky. Leah was out of the house at Soul Survivor. Rachel was in the house, but she was connecting with a youth group and quite a powerful group from another church, another youth group. So she was experiencing this stuff, and
Mm,
Celine brought them up, hearing the voice of God, and she was the head of the house spiritually. So she'd brought them up to understand that they could hear God, they could speak to God, and He would respond. They chose to be baptized
mm,
before I came into the kingdom. So, their journey, as far as I'm concerned, I have no fear of
yeah.
where they are and what's going on. They've Leah married a faith-filled man and has got two beautiful children. She leads worship in church with a team.
Amazing, by the
So
way, just to say.
yeah, she is amazing. She is amazing. She's fantastic, and she's a great worshipper. Um, Tom's also part of the band. He's
Mm,
a drummer and singer too. Um, Rachel, she's part of a church and she lives in South Africa right now. She will be coming home.
to is it okay?
I'm
Yeah,
prophesying that. I'm prophesying that she will be
clearly,
coming. But she's going to get married soon. She has a fiance now. And
congrats.
they're both, yes, thank you. They're both spirit-filled Christians. He comes from a great family, so I have very little worries about what's going on there. Regards to the supernatural, I think that's their journey. I think
Mm,
that's theirs. Um, Celine and I did some stuff for KLM locally in Littlehampton, where we live. And Leah and Tom joined us, and absolutely just to support them,
Right.
absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. If
Good.
they could have joined KLM West Sussex, they
Yeah.
they would have, but you know, it didn't pan out, didn't happen, and that's okay. There's other stuff going on, and you know, they get us to prophesy over them, and Celine's full of wisdom, and she helps guide them. So it's really cool. It's really cool. But we're in different places, and you know,
Yeah.
as a dad, I have to be comfortable, and I had to learn how to be comfortable with the supernatural things that I was seeing,
Mm,
and that it didn't necessarily make sense to them.
yeah.
So I had to back off and let them grow into this
Yeah.
stuff. So it's
Yeah. That's no, that's super helpful. And I guess that's why I was asking their age, because I can imagine it being a lot different if they were 8 and 12 versus their late teens. And I mean, I don't have kids, but one thing I have heard a lot is that things are caught more than taught with children. And sometimes you just being around people, like them just being around you and seeing how you operate, there's a hunger and almost like a curiosity that arises as the Holy Spirit leads them on their own journeys.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, shout out to them. Just as we bring this to land, I would love to know if there's anything that you wanted to share today that we haven't necessarily spoken about.
Wow. With the twists and turns of my life, from the very early days and what has happened, and being in a relationship with Celine, and 12. So what would that be? That would be 22 years ago. She came to faith, and 10 years after I came to faith. Um, I'm reminded constantly, and it helps me to stay, I don't know, humble, maybe not the right word, but fixed on Jesus, to remember that he had to move things and do all kinds of things to keep us together. The amount of times that I've felt the marriage foul,
Mm,
and yet we never gave up. And 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 I don't mean that to sound like we just kept fighting through.
right.
No, there were periods of time where we were in the same house but separate. There were periods of time where I had real harsh feelings towards Celine, and she probably and deservedly would have had harsh feelings towards me. We were separate in the same house, but we something, you know, what we tend to say is that neither of us gave up on the same day. We refused. We were too stubborn to give up on the same day. And I don't, sometimes it felt like, oh no, 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 you don't get to leave. You don't get to leave, you know, that kind of stubborn thing. And then other times it was, no, I don't, this needs to work. We need,
Yeah.
so it was very different. But I am completely at a loss to know how he did it. I kind of am beginning to be aware of why he did it, but how he did it, I just don't know. I've not the faintest idea. He brought us together at 16, and we're still together you know, I'm 59. I can't possibly tell you how old Selena.
Wild.
But we never, we had time off,
Yeah.
sure, but we never quit. We never let go. I'm sure we did quit, but we never let go.
Yeah.
So, and that was him. That I don't, yeah, that was him. And I see him more and more and more in my life, day in, day out. And it just gives me such joy to know that if I can do it, if I can be where I am, as bad as I have been, and such a terrible person, terrible husband, and a terrible dad, if I can be redeemed now where I am, then there's hope for anybody. And I
Amen.
really mean that.
Yeah.
Absolutely anybody.
Yeah. And honestly, like it's so encouraging because these are things that I just hear about, but because I've seen you on the other side, and it's so hard to even imagine the wrestling and the pain. So thank God that he did keep you together, because now you guys, like, it blesses me to see you together, and actually just how authentic you are, how you argue really well. I'm like, I want to argue like them. It's good, it's healthy.
Yeah,
um
we're gonna have to unpack that one day. I've heard you say that.
it's
What?
true though. It's true. We'll unpack it at another time, but I just want to thank you so much for joining us and for sharing, and speaking so much truth and wisdom, and also things that I didn't know about you as well. So I feel like I've learned a lot. So yeah,
Thank
hopefully
you.
everyone else will enjoy the rest of the week and catch us next time for another episode. So from us,
Right.
take care, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.